So, ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned, now we're joined by Hannah Becker, Senior Associate at Gray Robinson. Just a note about Gray Robinson. Their office primarily in Tampa, but they are a nationwide law firm that focuses on their practice. They have a specific practice devoted to the alcohol, beverage, and food law specializations, and they are tremendous at it. We have been working with the Gray Robinson firm, Elizabeth Conti and her team. Goodness, I hate to say how many years, but it's been well over 15, perhaps even 20. And they are outstanding. We refer them all over the country. So if you're looking for expertise in alcohol, beverage licensing, food issues, CBD, marijuana, all the licensing that comes with mergers and acquisitions, you are in the right place. And Hannah works all within those various systems. But she also has worked with all the different members in the hospitality industry from the three-tier system in the alcohol distribution side. And of course, she works with conditional and special use permitting and variance work, which can be very important, as we've all learned over time. She's here today to talk to us about her perspective and the firm's perspective around what's going to happen as we come out of COVID to all of these different laws that we've seen around alcohol distribution, and things like that. So Hannah, we're excited to have you join us. Please take it away.
Of course, and thank you so much for that introduction. As mentioned, my name is Hannah Becker. I'm a senior associate with Gray Robinson, and I've truly enjoyed working with Gray Robinson, of course, and the practice that I've developed. So today, of course, I have a short period of time, and then we have Q&A. So I wanted to kind of focus specifically on the curbside pickup and delivery privileges that a lot of on-premise retailers, either temporarily or now permanently, are going to be able to enjoy as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. So I guess in order to do that, we kind of have to start at the beginning of 2020, when a lot of state and local executive orders were issued, and you've heard it, I'm sure, stay-at-home orders were issued, and because of that, a lot of restaurants, hotels, and other on-premise retailers either needed to completely shut down, or they had very limited ways in order to sell their food, their drinks, non-alcohol and alcohol beverages. And because of this, some localities, some states decided to issue some temporary relief measures specifically for the hospitality industry. And in some cases, localities and states provided curbside service and or delivery privileges to such on-premise retailers. And like anything else with alcohol beverage regulation, of course, those temporary relief measures came with various conditions, requirements, restrictions that did not apply to every single city or every single town in the same state, or did not apply to one state versus the other. And then there's some states that didn't even issue any sort of executive order or temporary relief measure via an agency policy that even provided such delivery or curbside service privileges on a temporary basis. But so of course, you had to, at that time, whether it was March, April, May of 2020, you had to keep track of the executive orders and policies issued by your applicable state and or local ABC agency to keep track of the various executive orders that provided some sort of relief measure that could help your business stay afloat. And of course, you're still doing that. So even today, and now we're going to fast forward to Q2 of 2021, there has been, and which is great, a lot of legislation as well as extensions of executive orders and policies relating to not only curbside service and delivery, but to other measures that have really helped the hospitality industry. So as of March 2021, there were at least 24 pending bills that were being considered that would provide curbside service and or delivery privileges to on-premise retailers like hotels, restaurants, movie theaters, etc. So that already is quite a number. And even before, I would say, starting in the summer as well as the fall of last year, there were some states that already pushed bills and got them signed into law that would either temporarily, say for a number of years, provide such curbside service or delivery privileges to on-premise retailers. So it's really depends on the state that you're in, but there are plenty of states. And right now, at the point we're at, over 30 states that have either given some sort of extension to their order or have passed a bill and now it's law, or about like they're about to pass and have that bill that could allow for permanent or temporary curbside service or delivery privileges for on-premises retailers. So I wanted to highlight two ones that are right at the cusp of becoming law. So the first one is in Texas. So Texas, Texas ABC sent out if you're a part of their listserv, they sent out a email that pretty much said that in the next 10 days, and that's as of yesterday, they expect that the governor will sign their curbside service and cocktail cigar delivery bill, and that will become law. And of course, with that law, there's going to be various, and in this slide right now that you guys are seeing, it kind of highlights the different compliance considerations, and that would apply if the law is adopted. And then another state is Florida. So Florida, the same, it's not law yet, but they have, very soon it's expected that the governor will sign off on the Florida Senate Bill 148 that will also allow certain on-premises retailers to deliver cocktails or alcohol beverages to consumers at their home. So it's really, there are plenty of examples that I can go on and on during this. Definitely take longer than 30 minutes, but there are plenty of other states. Montana is an example. They allow now, very recently started allowing curbside service, not delivery, but curbside service. Another example is Washington. Washington, I think it was last month. There was, and this one's a good example because this law is not a permanent curbside service delivery privilege. Rather, it's a temporary one, but it's extended until 2023. I think it's July 1st. And that just shows the differences of the privileges that you're seeing right now. And you definitely need to keep track of them, whether it's an executive order, if it's law, you need to keep track of the amendments or the changes from day to day. Say that you looked at something yesterday, today there might be complete change to it, or it's no longer, it's expired. So a lot of as mentioned, when we were back in early 2020, some of those executive orders that offered those privileges, they may have already expired today. So just because you were delivering, just because you were offering curbside pickup services to your patrons last year, you may no longer be able to this year due to the executive order being expired. So I guess we can briefly touch on the various compliance considerations. I just at a high level, states, like I mentioned numerous times now, every state's law or every locality's ordinance or the executive orders, they will offer, say for example, cocktails to go or delivery privileges, but they will restrict the volume of the alcohol that you're selling per order, or they will restrict the age of the delivery person or the curbside delivery employee that's handing over the alcohol beverages to the consumer to a certain age. Or there'll be a signature requirement. So at the point of delivery, the consumer receiving the order must sign your form and verify that you've received the alcohol order. There are requirements when it comes to food. So some states will allow an on-premise retailer like a restaurant to deliver or offer curbside service, but it has to be sold with food, or in some cases, they require a meal, and that law or that ordinance or that executive order will define what a meal means. So you have to pay attention to that. Whether or not your state or locality will allow you to use the services of a third-party delivery service. Sometimes they won't, and you have to use an employee. The other consideration is sometimes there's a restriction as to how many miles away from your restaurant, your hotel, or your on-premise location, how far away in mileage they usually do it, or they'll say within the county that you can deliver your alcohol to the consumer. So those are restrictions. Texas is an example of a state that does implement that. It's also really important to confirm that the license that you hold is capable of enjoying the new legislation that's been passed or the executive order. So Texas is another good example where there's only certain on-premises retailers that can enjoy the privileges, assuming it's the governor signs that bill. So that's it for now, and I look forward to any questions that everyone in this meeting may have, and just thought it was a great opportunity to talk on a fun subject and get our minds thinking.
Thank you, Hannah. That's terrific. And this compliance consideration list is really helpful. And it does spawn a few questions. I'd like to remind the audience that you can chime in or send a message through the chat. But Hannah, my first question has to do with ghost kitchens. We've been talking quite a bit about ghost kitchens, and I'm assuming you're familiar with the term. Mm-hmm. Is that fair? It's not always that thing, but is it fair to assume that these types of capabilities will extend to them as well, even though they're not traditional brick and mortar establishments?
No, definitely. It depends. Like I just mentioned, it depends on their license. So if they hold the license that the state has decided has this new privilege of either curbside or delivery, as long as they hold that appropriate license, then definitely could extend to that. I wouldn't say it's every single state that I've seen new legislation it would apply. Just really depends on the state locality where that ghost kitchen is located. And all the other awesome compliance concerns that they will think of as legislatures or the agency will think of.
Yeah, that's for sure, right? There's a lot of them out there. And I guess you don't ever foresee a uniform ABC in all 50 states, do you?
No.
That would be, yeah.
That's one thing I would not predict.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well,
it would make it easier for everyone. I think everyone here would agree that would be awesome.
It would be a remarkable shift and change. Not so good for your law practice, but it would be good. But Hannah, I want to delve a little bit into your thinking around the 3-tier process. And actually, if you don't mind, for some of the folks on that don't understand the difference between the 3 tiers, can we start with that? And can you just give them a quick 101 on the 3 tiers?
Oh, perfect.
That came out after Prohibition, right? That was in.
Yeah, for sure. So the United States has this awesome, I guess, way to put it. It's called the 3-tier system of alcoholic beverage distribution here in the United States. The top of the tier are manufacturers and importers. And of course, that's the distilleries, wineries, breweries, craft, and obviously the craft distilleries and breweries and wineries. And then they sell to the second tier of the 3-tier system, which is our wholesale distributors. And then the third tier are retailers. So whether it's off-premise, like liquor stores, convenience stores, supermarkets. And then there's on-premise retailers like restaurants, movie theaters, hotels, etc. So everyone, basically the manufacturers sell to wholesalers and the wholesalers sell to retailers. And unless there are, of course, state-specific exceptions to the 3-tier system, but that's pretty generally how it flows.
Yeah, and it's important that everybody understand that, because in terms of promotions, buying and selling, etc., you really can run afoul pretty easily of some of the boundaries, right?
Definitely.
Yeah, most definitely. And so the question I have now with that foundation is, it seems to me, Hannah, with some of the wineries being able to import or sell directly to consumers right out of state, you're seeing some of the things you've mentioned today. It seems to me we're seeing a bit of an erosion between those hard boundaries in the three-tier system. Is that a fair way to characterize it? And do you think that will
fair, yeah.
continue?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and wineries are definitely the subsection of the first tier that are enjoying the most number of states where they have DTC or direct to consumer privileges. And that has to do, you can go really into that, but that has to do with a Supreme Court case, Granholm, and a lot of states after that adopted solely for the wineries a direct to consumer DTC privilege via legislation. But we've seen, I would say, in the last number of years, 2019 on, a lot of states, and especially I would say last year, a lot of distilleries and a lot of breweries are also enjoying direct to consumer privileges, whether it's via legislation or some other policy change. So it's definitely, and the more recent Supreme Court cases as well have kind of been murking the water and making it kind of eroding, like you said, the three-tier system. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on. But the same thing can be said for retailers and the third tier. So I would say before the pandemic, you wouldn't have imagined that on-premises retailers would basically means that those license types would only allow the retail establishment to sell to consumers or their patrons for on-premises consumption. So only within the restaurant, only within the hotel premises. But now we're seeing that changing, and retailers not only within the state are getting more and more, and specifically on-premises retailers are gaining the ability to deliver away from their licensed premises. But even off-premises retailers, they're gaining more and more states where they can, whether it's in-person delivery or shipments, can deliver to their consumers. And then there are states that are being added to the list where you can, as an out-of-state retailer, ship into a consumer outside of your state. So there are more and more states being added to that list. So with each year, with each month, it's definitely becoming more and more of a complex field, and the three-tier system isn't as structured as they had originally made it to be.
It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out, and if promotions tend to cross promotions among the tiers tend to loosen up. But it just seems to be a matter of time for sure. I want to ask a question, Hannah, and I don't know if you guys get this deep with your practice, but I know that some of the legislation we're seeing around this curbside goes so far as to dictate or specify supply chain security around the containers, right? What are you recommending, if you guys are? What are you recommending? I mean, obviously it could be just general compliance, but anything specific that you guys are concerned about or thinking about or trying to pass on to your customers that are doing this delivery or curbside in terms of supply chain security?
So that actually brings it, and that should have been as part of that last slide list of considerations. There are a lot of states that either have law now in the books or they're pending legislation that has security requirements, and Florida is a good example of that, where you either have to have it in a locked compartment in your vehicle, you can have it behind the driver's seat, or they'll require it behind the passenger row. So I guess they're alluding to the trunk. So, and then some bills or laws will require that the alcohol be kept in the trunk. So that's definitely a recommendation, even if it's not a requirement under the law. And then there's another compliance requirement as to when you package the alcohol beverages. Most states, or I won't say most, but a number of states will require that it's in a manufacturer sealed container, or in the states where you're allowed to premix a cocktail and then deliver that to a consumer, it has to be a retailer sealed container. And in that case, you definitely want to make sure that it's very safely sealed, and whatever technology that's out there, you want to ensure that it cannot be easily opened, whether it's by a person under the age of 21 or by any, and even the person delivering the container, you want to make sure that it's not easily opened. And there are also requirements, and if it's not a requirement under the law or the agency's policy, that you place a warning label or whether it's in the container itself or the container that's holding the alcohol beverage drinks or packaged alcohol beverage, that basically warns against drinking the alcohol beverage if you're under 21 or if you're pregnant, etc. So those are two, whether it's a recommendation or just a requirement under law, that should be taken into consideration before you do an alcohol delivery or even a curbside service of the alcohol that you're selling.
So we probably shouldn't see a margarita with a straw in it being shipped out, right?
No, you can include it on the side and like if you want to make it cute.
Tape to the side is probably the best approach. Well, I do find it interesting, just a comment, but I'd like to get your thoughts. We spend the legislature spends a lot of time kind of in the weeds on the security of alcohol, but I haven't seen much legislation around the supply chain security of food delivery. Have you seen that, or is it just mainly focused on alcohol?
Where I've seen it mostly has been alcohol, for sure.
Yeah.
Where I've seen it for food is just those tamper resistant, some sort of whether it's a sticker or a tamper resistant container. I have seen that. But I've more seen it in the with the new alcohol legislation and just recommendations that come from the agencies. But that's for sure. That's a good point. I feel like it should apply to both, for sure, because there's a lot of things that are at issue with when it comes to food.
Food, for sure. And in my perspective, there's a whole lot more food being delivered right now than alcohol.
Yep.
And so you've got a much bigger chance of things going on. Hannah, David Denny, who spoke yesterday for us about ghost kitchens, actually.
Okay.
He said that actually in Texas, he said it's the CO is likely for a commercial kitchen, and he said that's causing a little confusion, I'm guessing, around the legislation. David, feel free to chime in if you're still with us. He may have jumped off, but in any event, do I hear him? There he is.
Hey, sorry.
Hi.
He's acting under his pseudonym, Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the TABC permit in Texas is, neither cities nor TABC have a permit that encompasses the newness of a virtual kitchen or a ghost kitchen. So I only mentioned it so practitioners can be prepared for confusion between the regulatory agencies as you're trying to get permitted at the town level. If you're a ghost kitchen, you're probably not a restaurant, and you're going to be permitted as a commercial kitchen through their city planning, permitting, certificate of occupancy. But when you apply for signatures in order to get your TABC permit, and you describe it as a restaurant mixed beverage permit, the head scratchers at the city are going to give you a hard time. And that, as anytime we develop something new, it causes some confusion, especially with employees of municipalities who just check boxes and don't think creatively all the time. And so, just as a way to let people know, with the ghost kitchen thread that's woven its way through the past couple of days, that will continue to be an issue. We don't even have time in this legislative session to address it. So we're going to be stuck with this confusion for 2 more years in Texas.
Well, it's just more business for Hannah is what that means.
That's right.
David, just keep your video on, because wait, real quick, Hannah, don't go anywhere, Hannah. I want to get back to you. But David, where is your office? You're in Fort Worth or Arlington, or where are you?
No, I'm in Dallas.
Oh, you're in Dallas. Okay, I just want the entire audience to look and see how flat that is outside his window. David, it looks to me like if it would take your dog 3 days to run away. It's so flat out there. I mean, I could see you on day 2 going, yeah, there he goes. And I
Yeah.
grew up in Dallas. I don't remember it being that flat. You picked the flattest part I can imagine.
I can pretty much see my house from here.
Well, the same can be said about Florida. We're extremely
Yeah.
flat over here.
Yeah, that's very true. But you look out your window, you probably see the ocean. I can guarantee it's not that flat. It's flat enough.
Yeah, no,
for
you do see the ocean.
Yeah. Well, let's see, Hannah. Any final comments or thoughts, Hannah?
So picking up on just the confusion at the local level, that is something that is it's definitely something really important to flag. It's a process to kind of explain, because a lot of times the localities are just catching up to the state's new laws. So there are times where I'm talking to a locality and they're like, oh no, the state hasn't passed it. I'm like, actually they have. And you actually have the authority at the local level to decide whether or not you will allow, and in the case of on-premises retailers, for them to deliver alcohol. So it's like sometimes it's even instances where they had no idea that deliveries were even permissible at the time. So it's definitely it's going to be an exercise for some time, just because, like we were talking earlier, the 3-tier system and just what an on-premises retailer with their license have been able to do for so many years, it's changing. So it's definitely going to be educational, but it's of course a privilege that I'm sure many of the people that are here are going to embrace, and it's definitely going to help just the hospitality industry altogether.
And we need that help. Very good.
100%.
Lovely way to end and to wrap up the conference. Hannah, thank you so much, and the Gray Robinson team for joining us. We greatly appreciate your wisdom. Thank you for sharing it with us. Pleasure to have you here with us.